Hi, I'm Dr. Boyce Watkins from Your Black World, and I have a very special guest here today, Mr. Michael Imhotep. He's the founder of the African History Network, and he's just a professional all the way around. He does radio, he does lots of stuff on social media, but most importantly, he's very conscious. And he and I just had a great conversation about the direction of hip hop. And how that's influenced the thinking of black people in America. How we've been many of our kids, unfortunately, have been brainwashed by music that is not reflective of a trajectory that's going to lead them to a positive place. And we're going to talk about a little bit more about that in a second. But first, I want to ask my brother, how are you doing today?
Hey, I'm fantastic, brother. How are you doing today?
I'm doing really well, man. I was sitting there marveling at your amazing equipment, man. You got the you mentioned your 8-channel mixer and
yes.
your different cameras, and I think that's awesome. I mean,
thank you.
I respect that so much, and I can tell from the beginning you are a true professional in radio. And you right now your show you're on. Tell me the name of your show.
Well, it's the African History Network show.
Okay.
And we're on the Empowerment Radio Network, which is founded by Dave Anderson. It's the African American Network. We're on there Sundays, 5 p.m. to 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And then we're also on Blog Talk Radio, blogtalkradio.com. I've been on Blog Talk Radio for about 4 years now, actually a little more than 4 years. And we're basically on Monday through Friday, 8 p.m. to 10 p.m. on Blog Talk. The best thing for people to do, they can go to our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. We have all the information right there on the homepage. And on Blog Talk Radio, my Blog Talk Radio shows are archived, and they're also uploaded to iTunes as well. So people can go listen to the archived episodes. And, we basically focus on educating, empowering, and inspiring people of African descent throughout the diaspora and around the world. So we have listeners all around the world. We deal with topics dealing with African American history, but also current topics. We just covered the Renisha McBride murder case that took place, where the murder took place in Dearborn Heights, Michigan, but the case was in Detroit, Michigan. And we're located in Detroit, Michigan also, by the way. And we cover a number of different topics, a lot of articles we cover from yourblackworld.com, Financial Juneteenth, things like this, some of your sites. And we try to expose people to a lot of different African-American news sources, number one. So whether it's news1.com, Black America Web, yourblackworld.com, Financial Juneteenth, a number of different sources, Degrio, theroot.com. We try to expose them to a number of different African-American news sources, whether they're owned by African-Americans or target African-Americans. And then also we do a lot of news stories that you won't find in mainstream news media as well. So we get a tremendous response from the listeners, and our Facebook fan page has as of today about 202,000 followers. The African History Network is our Facebook fan page. So it took us about 4 years to get it to that, but it's on our Facebook fan page we post the majority of our articles are dealing with our history, culture, current events, things of this nature. So it's exposing people to all different types of information that they are not used to getting, whether it's dealing with ancient African history coming out of, whether it's Ghana or ancient Kemet, what the Arabs call Egypt, things like this, or whether it's dealing with history, dealing with the transatlantic slave trade, or history, like, say, during the Reconstruction era, things of this nature. We deal with a lot of different topics, a lot of different information.
Okay. Well, I love it, and I think that education is so important because
absolutely
one of the great challenges, as you can imagine, and I'm sure you know this, is that we don't know who we are. And because we don't know who we are, we behave like other people tell us we're supposed to behave. We become the people that other people think we are, which is incredibly unfortunate. Now, you and I were talking about hip hop and how hip hop was kind of flipped on its head. You argued that it was done in a way to poison the youth because you said that that in order to control a group of people or destroy a group of people, you take over the minds of the youth. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Right, and just to take a step back, just to comment on what you were talking about. What you do for yourself, what you do to yourself, and what you allow other people to do to you is based upon what you think about yourself. What you think about yourself is based upon what you've been taught about yourself. What you've been taught about yourself is based upon everything you've read, heard, and seen about yourself. So when you control the radius of a man's thought, you can control the circumference of his actions. The mind can't do what it doesn't know. So controlling people's access to information, controlling their circumference of awareness is extremely important. In the book Secrets of the Millionaire Mind, which I'm sure you're probably familiar with, T. Harv Eker, he talks about the process of manifestation. And the process of manifestation states that your thoughts create feelings, your feelings create actions and behaviors, your actions and behaviors create results. Your thoughts create feelings, your feelings create actions and behaviors, your actions and behaviors create results. So when you control the information that people have, which influences their thoughts, you can ultimately control their results and behaviors. Okay, so this is extremely important to help lay this foundation. Now, when we look at hip hop, conscious hip hop was thriving in the late 80s, early 90s. You had groups like Public Enemy. You're going to have the X-Clan, Poor Righteous Teachers, Brand Nubians, even groups like the Diggable Planets, things like this. And it was cool to be conscious. It was popular. You know, you had the Malcolm X incorporated into hip hop. When the Malcolm X movie came out in '92, Spike Lee directed it. Denzel Washington starred in it. You had the X caps, the X jackets. Some brothers were wearing the Malcolm X glasses. Remember, going back to the late '80s, we had a resurgence and pride in African history. We were wearing the $10 African medallions. Many of us, we stopped wearing the gold rope chains that cost hundreds of thousands of dollars and started buying the $10 African medallions because we were identifying with Africa. You had the anti-apartheid movement in South Africa going on, which was incorporated into hip hop. We were starting to develop a international political consciousness, starting to learn about South Africa, learning about Nelson Mandela, learning what happened in South Africa, the invasion by the Dutch and the British, things like this. So it was reconnecting us to African history. You had people like groups like the X-Clan and the Arrested Development, two different types of hip hop groups, but still bringing about a consciousness for the youth. And you had TV shows like A Different World that was on the air. So Different World starts, if I remember correctly, in 1987. Yep. It's on the air for 6 seasons, one of the greatest shows in the history of television. Okay? Mm-hmm. Each week we saw people that looked like us on an African-American college campus. Even though it was a fictitious college, they were dealing with real life events. Okay, mm-hmm. and real life circumstances. And we saw people that looked like us doing fantastic things, coming from all different backgrounds. So whether they were a Dwayne Wayne coming from a blue collar background, whether they were a Whitley Gilbert coming from a privileged background, whether they were somebody like Jada Pinkett Smith who scammed her way into school, Leela James, they all were working together and learning from one another. We saw them in the classrooms, learning African history, learning about Dr. W.B. Du Bois, learning about Booker T. Washington, things like this. And for many of us, this was the first time, even though it was fictitious, this was the first time we got to see African-American professors. Many of us had never seen African-American professors before. But it was, even though it was fictitious, it was a representation of a reality that some of us did not know existed. So during the period of time that A Different World was on the air, enrollment at historically black colleges tripled because we got to see examples of positivity, and that overcame a lot of the misinformation about historically black colleges and how they are inferior and things of this nature. And today you have the white population at a lot of historically black colleges is actually growing. Okay, why? Because they see they can get a quality education for 1/3 the cost of the state university or things like this. Okay, so you had all these things going on in the late 80s, early 90s, and conscious hip hop was coming so powerful that corporate America took it over and they sent it in a different direction. You start having the infusion, even though NWA come out in the late 80s, and we can go back to 1986 with Ice-T, you still had a choice. You still had a balance, so to speak, on the radio, things of this nature. But you're going to see that go more and more to the direction of gangster rap. You're going to see it go more and more into the direction infusing misogyny of women, things of this nature. A couple of things we have to look at is, number one, 1994, the Omnibus Crime Bill, written into law, passed, signed into law by Bill Clinton. Some people call him the first black president, but if you study the history of it, his 8-year tenure was detrimental to African Americans. You had more African Americans that went to prison during the 8-year period of time that Bill Clinton was in office than any other 8-year period of time in history. But that Omnibus Crime Bill three of the main entities behind that were ALEC, American Legislative Exchange Council, CCA, Corrections Corporation of America, which is the largest owner-operator of privatized prisons in the country. They own or operate 67 privatized prisons in the country. And also GeoCorp, which back then was called Wackenhut, another large operator of privatized prisons. So it was the omnibus crime bill that instituted, the 3 strikes and you're out, made national, basically, the disparity in the crack cocaine laws, things like this, truth and sentencing laws. And it was detrimental to African Americans. But also, what a lot of people don't know is that when you have groups like Corrections Corporation of America, you have entities like the Vanguard Inc. that owns major stakes in Corrections Corporation of America, but also owns major stakes in Viacom and Time Warner, which are 2 of the 6 largest media conglomerates in the country. Okay. The Vanguard owns 15,586,000 shares of Corrections Corporation of America. They are the largest shareholder in CCA, and they are the 3rd largest shareholder in Time Warner and Viacom. Okay, people can go to finance.yahoo.com. Finance.yahoo.com. Look up CCA, Corrections Corporation of America. They are a publicly traded stock. They're on the stock exchange. Their symbol is CWX. Their stock trades around $30 a share. And you go look at the information on finance.yahoo.com. It shows you the major investors, and you see the Vanguard there, the Vanguard Inc. Okay, so we have to look at I do a lecture series, Slavery's Back in Effect, the hidden relationship between the prison industrial complex, the new voter ID laws, and black population control. And I deal with these entities behind this, whether it's the Koch brothers, whether it's American Legislative Exchange Council, and ALEC. They are the main entities behind your voter ID laws that were being pushed in 2010. And there's a resurgence of them today, about 34 states, to suppress the vote. Okay, they were like one of the major entities behind that. And they are in bed with the privatized prison industries. And so you have to look at all these entities behind this. And one of the things that I focus on, and I work with returning citizens, ex-offenders, I work with them in construction trades programs and things like this. We have to get this information to our people to show how this game is set up. Many of them don't know how this game is set up. But when we get this information to them, it can help them, number one, make better choices. Number one. Number two, it shows us why we have to focus more on self-reliance, why we have to become the number one employer of our own people, like every other ethnic group. This is something George Frazier's been teaching us for 20 years that I know of, something that Dr. Claude Anderson has been talking about, things like this. Unfortunately, the majority of your mainstream so-called black leaders, I've referred to them as Negro leaders and civil rights superstars. That's basically what they're, Negro leaders and civil rights superstars. Some of them have good hearts and mean well. Others are just professional beggars. Most of them are not pushing forth an economic empowerment agenda for African Americans. Most of them, they almost never talk about economic empowerment, us becoming the number one employers of our own people. And when you go to their websites, for the most part, they don't have any type of economic empowerment agenda focusing on recycling our $1.1 trillion gross domestic product, going from it recycling one time in our community to 8 to 12 times, like the majority of other ethnic groups, things like this. And if you look at who their donors are, they're heavily financed by corporate America, which explains why. Because the corporate America, they want to keep you dependent upon getting your products and goods and services from them. Okay, so they are not trying to help you become self-reliant or anything like this. So they as Dr. Umar Johnson talks about, oftentimes these organizations will help fund your organization. These corporations will help fund your organization so they can control you. They can control your actions and behaviors.
Well, I think that's an important point because when you talk about money is power, right? We know
absolutely
that, right? And so
absolutely.
So the question anybody has to ask is why would anybody give you their power and not expect something in return?
Absolutely.
Powerful people, powerful people didn't become powerful by giving their power away for nothing, right? So
Right,
typically,
right.
they don't do charity; they make investments, and an investment
Right,
might mean, look, if I give the NAACP $100,000 or
right.
50,000 or whatever, Negroes come cheap. We know that black men, black women don't come cheap, but Negroes come cheap, and so they say, well, look, if I give the NAACP a few dollars, that will keep them off my back, so that if one of my employees ever goes to try to complain about racial discrimination or anything that we've done or that we're doing, the NAACP will probably not bother us because we are one of the major donors. And if they do decide to bother us, we just keep increasing the donation until they go silent, right?
Absolutely. Well, just recently it was reported that with this whole net neutrality issue that's going on right now, different news entities, HuffingtonPost.com is one of them. I know News1.com has reported on this as well. How some of your major civil rights organizations are on the side of major corporations, whether it's Verizon, whether it's Comcast, AT&T. The NAACP, for instance, reported by the HuffingtonPost.com, they talked about how in 2009 the NAACP received $1 million in donations from AT&T. And in 2012, they received between $100,000 and $199,000. Now, I did the research on that myself. I went to the NAACP's website, looked at their annual report for 2012. Page 42 of their annual report shows a lot of the corporate donations: Walmart, Coca-Cola, AT&T, things like this. And in 2012, they got between $100,000 and $199,000 from AT&T. What they are citing with AT&T and this whole net neutrality issue, and is going to work against a lot of African American owned small businesses, things of this nature. So when you look at some of the decisions, and I'm not saying the NAACP has never done anything that was any good. I'm not saying you don't have any people at any of these organizations that don't have good hearts or good intentions. But what happens is, unfortunately, many of them are ruled by money, number one. Number two, when you study the history of the NAACP, it was never set up, it was never designed for the freedom and liberation of African Americans to become economically empowered, anything like this. The Niagara movement, which preceded the NAACP, had an economic empowerment agenda for African Americans. The NAACP never had one on a national basis. Okay, never had one. And if people read the book Betrayal by Any Other Name by Dr. Khalil Al-Mansour, you read pages 317 through about 342, he breaks down the history of the NAACP, going back to their first chairman, Joel Spingarn, okay, who's a European Jew, and the second chairman was his brother, either his brother or his cousin, Arthur Spingarn. They did not have a chairman that was African American until about 1976. Okay, there's some other things that you can research on him in that book that breaks down, and they found out through the Freedom of Information Act that he was a spy for the Military Intelligence Division also, and turned over 32,000 names of NAACP members to the government as well. And we also know that the NAACP, through the Crisis magazine, and Dr. W.B. Du Bois was the editor of the Crisis magazine. We know that it was a weapon used against Marcus Mosiah Garvey, who led the largest mass movement of African people in this country. Now, we can disagree about certain things about Garvey, but he owned businesses. He was inspiring African Americans, and at a time when you only had 10 or 11 million African Americans in this country, based upon the census statistics, he had somewhere between 4 million to 6 million members in his organization, the UNIA, Universal Negro Improvement Association. So when we go back and look at history, now, once again, there's some cases that they got involved in, which they should have been, and it was good and things like this. But overall, especially if you look closer to the day, overall, you see a collaboration with corporate America at the expense of the people who they claim that they serve.
Well, you talk about that collaboration. It is so interesting. A lot of people will say that African Americans don't create jobs, and and that's actually not true, because
not true.
We create millions of jobs for other people. Seriously, I mean, there are entire industries that are built on addictive consumerism. And it really happens in America as a whole. I mean, one of the great drivers of the economy is consumer spending, which is why they don't want you saving your money and investing your money or becoming financially literate. They really want you to give it right back to corporations. But and actually that could work if corporations were creating jobs right here in the U.S., but they're not. They're creating jobs overseas. They're now hiring prison inmates. They're doing all these things to avoid. They're not even paying taxes in the U.S. in a lot of cases. So they're literally sucking your money out of your pocket and sending it overseas and putting it back into the pockets of the rich. That's why the gap between the rich and the poor has grown so much. and African Americans, we're right in the middle of this. You know, we are brainwashed to be excessive consumers. You know, from the very beginning, and you know, at the end of the day, excuse me. It's so interesting that that when you talk about people having a direct incentive to see to it that we are not empowered, that we're not educated, you know, it makes perfect sense. You know, and the only hope we really have, it comes from people like yourself who are going to lay out the truth for people, as opposed to these organizations like the NAACP, which unfortunately is, you know, it has become just, or not even become, it really, from what I gather, it has always been relatively worthless for regular working class black folks. I mean, even if you look at the way they behave since Obama was elected, it's been atrocious. If you look at that board doesn't allow anything progressive to occur. I've known people who've gone into the NAACP believing that this was an opportunity for them to change the world for the better, and many of them walk away frustrated, disgruntled, like wait a minute, something is wrong with these Negroes who are running this group, and I think that's. And I think that truth has to be told. I think and the funny thing is, I literally had somebody. He's a great radio show host like yourself, and I remember I said just one little peep about the NAACP, and he sent me a text, and he said, "Hey man, can we talk for a minute?" I said, "Yeah, what's going on?" He said, "Hey man, hey Boyce, you might want to stay off the NAACP, man. You know, you don't want to make an enemy out of the NAACP." And I was thinking, well, I mean, you know, being friends with the NAACP does not help my people very much. So who gives a damn? You know, I mean, I mean, we got to be real. You know,
we have to tell the truth. We have to tell the truth, but do it in a respectful way, and have it backed by facts and evidence. You know, and what happens is, unfortunately, a lot of people have never studied the history of the NAACP. So I encourage people to do that. Another excellent book that I recommend for people to read is How White Folks Got So Rich, The Untold History of American White Supremacy. And it's only about 92 pages. It was published by the Nation of Islam Research Group, but it's backed with facts and evidence, and it deals with the whole history of public policy in America that has been geared towards shifting the wealth to the hands of the dominant white society, and it deals with, you know, a lot of history of racism, things like this. They go back to the acquisition, the stealing of 2.3 billion acres of land by Europeans from the indigenous people, and a lot of these indigenous people were African people. A lot of people don't know that African people have been in this country going back thousands and thousands of years. I recommend the book to people by Dr. David Imhotep, no relation to me, but he wrote the book, The First Americans Were Africans, Documented Evidence. And he has 713 footnotes in his book, thoroughly documenting an African presence in North, Central, and South America. South America going back at least 56,000 years ago. North America, basically the territory today we call the United States, going back at least 51,700 years ago. So, you know, this history, you know, once again, what you do for yourself, what you do to yourself, and what you allow other people to do to you is based upon what you think about yourself. What you think about yourself is based upon what you've been taught about yourself. And what you've been taught about yourself is based upon everything you've read, heard, and seen about yourself. So if you think that your history in this country starts in slavery, then you will accept people putting dehumanizing labels on you. You will subconsciously think of yourself as a slave or up from slavery, things like this. Well, wait a second. No, African people are the indigenous people to this land, North, Central, and South America. 70% of the people who Columbus encounters on his 4 voyages starting August 3rd, 1492, were people of African descent. Okay, and what a lot of people don't know is that the Native Americans that people think were the first people here in this land, the Native Americans are the offspring of an intermixing of Africans and Asians who come here around 3000 BC. They're offsprings of the people who are labeled the Native Americans. And if you go look at old photographs of a lot of these Native Americans, you see that these were darker skinned people, high cheekbones, things of this nature. Over time, they become very light skinned and white. A lot of that has to do with the fact that about 90% of the people today claiming to be Native American in this country are actually descendants of Europeans who had their names inserted on the Dawes Rolls. The Dawes Rolls started in 1877, D-A-W-E-S. Go to answers.com, look up the Dawes Rolls, D-A-W-E-S. They inserted their names into the, paid $5 to have their names inserted into the Dawes Rolls because all these benefits were being redistributed to Native Americans. Some African Americans were trying to get these benefits, or some of us were members of Native American tribes, Black Indians, things like this. So when Europeans found out about these benefits, free land, free taxes, all different types of things like this, free college tuition, what have you, they paid $5 to have their names inserted on the Dawes Rolls, become members of these different Native American tribes, what have you. And so a lot of people today, the majority of these people today claiming to be Native Americans are really descendants of Europeans. Okay, so that's a lot of history that a lot of us don't know about. They deal with that some in that book, How White Folks Got So Rich, as well as in the documentary Hidden Colors 2, The Triumph of Melanin. They talk about that there as well. So, this information is extremely important, but also very quickly going back to what you said, knowledge is power. When you look at the 10 forms of wealth that Dr. Dennis Kimbrough teaches, and I incorporate this into some of my presentations as well, because I've taught entrepreneurship for 8 years, done business consulting for about 7 years. Knowledge is number one. Money is number three. Because if you don't have the knowledge of how to handle the money, and you can appreciate this as a finance professor, you won't know what to do with the money. You won't know what to do. So consequently, our gross domestic product is $1.1 trillion a year. 98% of our dollars are spent with people that don't look like us. 95% with European Americans, 3% with other ethnic groups, and only approximately about 2% is circulated within our own businesses because we don't understand self-reliance. We don't understand the need to support our own businesses, and that we have to become the number one employers of our own people, just like every other ethnic group. So this is why I tell people, if we ever get reparations, the majority of it should not be in the form of money, because if all of us got $100,000 today, Europeans will have it all back this time next week, because we don't understand what to do with the money. The majority of us.
Absolutely. I agree with you 100%. They say money can't buy happiness, but I would say that it's the intelligent application of money that can improve your life and
absolutely
connect you to happiness. Because I know that being broke does not make me happy at all, but being ignorant makes me even less happy. So I want to end this up, man, with one last question. I want to go back to A Different World. So A Different World was such a great show. It was so impactful and influential. People loved it. And I've been watching episodes of A Different World recently, actually, and
me too.
And and it's just it makes you reminisce and reflect on what television was back then, and you see what it's degraded to now. You see love and hip hop, and you got little kids watching shows about black women making sex tapes and you're getting high on drugs and men going back and forth to jail, everybody tattooed from head to toe. It's just so interesting because there's really not one message in nearly any of this programming or any of the programming on the radio that is going to lead to an empowered life. If you are getting high and drunk all the time, you're not going to have a good life. If you're throwing away all your money, you're not going to have a good life. If you're fantasizing and glorifying the idea of killing another black man or black woman, you're not going to have a good life. If you glorify ignorance, you're not going to have a good life. And so you just really see just this indoctrination into a horribly self-destructive culture that comes through media. Tell me this, why do you think that a show like A Different World just isn't even up for consideration by many of these major networks now? I mean, why won't they go back to, or why wouldn't they even consider the idea of having something like this on television as opposed to some of these other things that we're seeing on TV?
Okay, excellent question. First of all, we have to understand that power is the ability to define and shape reality. and have other people accept your definition of reality as if it were their own. Power coming from the Latin word potere, meaning to be able. Power is the ability to define and shape reality and have other people accept your definition of reality as if it were their own. Brother Kaba Kamene, also known as Booker T. Coleman, one of my teachers, talked about this. Dr. Wade Nobles, who's a famous African-American psychologist, deals with this also. Now, when we look at a different world, the powerhouse behind a different world was Bill Cosby. Okay, Bill Cosby had already had a huge hit with The Cosby Show, which started in about 1984 on NBC. It took NBC from last place to first place. It totally revitalized, number one, the sitcom genre. Because if you study history back at that time, the sitcom genre had died. It revamped the sitcom genre. It revamped in NBC. So it put him in a position where he could basically call the shots. And this was something that he wanted to do. So, you know, this is what they did. So you have some titans today, like a Tyler Perry, who's working with Oprah Winfrey on the OWN network. You have that today. Today, one of the things that you have is that even though we have about 44 million African Americans, the viewership is so splintered now because of cable television. Okay, see, you have more options today. Back then, even though a lot of people had, some people had cable back in the 80s, early 90s, you didn't have as many TV options. So the viewership is splintered now, number one. Number two, you have, in 1980, to give you an example, you had about 50 media companies that controlled 90% of what you read, saw, and heard. Okay. Today, you have 6 media companies that control 90% of what you read, see, and hear. So you have less companies. You have less companies in control. They have more power. You have a smaller group of people watching broadcast television. Recently, Netflix has become a huge option to broadcast television because Netflix has original programming. Netflix has thousands of movies and TV shows. Hulu Plus is another option, even though Hulu Plus is owned by 2 networks. I forgot which 2. I think it's CBS and another one. I forgot.
I thought NBC was one of the owners. Unless
there may be, yeah, it's 2 networks that form Hulu to show their content, things like this. So you have at least when we look at broadcast TV, you don't have a dominant titan, a dominant force involved in broadcast TV like you did with Bill Cosby. Number one. Number two, back at that time, I think the timing was really right because you had conscious hip hop. You had conscious hip hop going on. You had an environment. You had movies like School Days, which came out about 88. Okay, movies like School Days, things like this. And also on the Cosby Show, if you look at it, it primed us for a different world. Number one, it's a spinoff of a different world. Number two, they focused on Hillman College on the Cosby Show. So it primed us to reorientate our minds to a positive African-American college. Bill Cosby wore the sweatshirts with African-American colleges, historically black colleges on and things like this. So you had this whole movement that set up a different world. And if we go back and look, the first season of The Different World was not that great. They brought in Debbie Allen as I think the director on the second season. And then it transformed because because if you watch the first season, it's hard to really tell that it's a black college.
Yeah, they even got rid of the white girl,
Marissa Tomei.
Marissa
Tomei.
Which I thought that was unfair. I mean, Marissa Tomei was such a great actress. You know, I thought that was kind of mean to kind of get rid of the white girl. But
that's one decision Debbie Allen made.
But you're right though. I mean, the show literally was like night and day between season 1 and season 2. It got so much spicier.
Yes. But now recently there has been a campaign to bring A Different World back in some form, either to network TV or something like that. Debbie Allen tweeted about this on her Twitter page. I follow Debbie Allen. So, I think it's a few things. Number one, we have to push that agenda that we want to see a different world back, or a show like A Different World, whether it's on network television, whether it's on the OWN network or something like this. I think we have to link with, they just actually on Oprah's network, they just did a reunion of some of the cast members of A Different World. Okay. So I think we have to push that, whether we talk to Oprah about it or what have you. I think we have to push that because people will listen to the consumer, to the viewer, if it's enough of us talking about this. Okay. And when people like Debbie Allen put out the call about it, I think we have to respond because she has the ear of certain people, whether it's a Tyler Perry or Oprah, what have you. And A Different World has a track record. So I think it's a matter of us, whether we do petitions on change.org or what have you. I think it's a matter of us really voicing the need for something like this. I would like to see it, in one sense, I like to see it on the OWN network because it's African American owned, or TV One, something like that, But I think that's something that we really have to push. We really have to vocalize. But also, all 6 seasons of A Different World are on Hulu Plus. I've gone through and watched all 6 seasons recently. Okay, it's on Hulu Plus.
People should also know that I found it on YouTube, actually.
Well, I've seen some episodes on YouTube. I haven't seen like all 6 seasons.
Yeah, they've got somebody uploaded all of them as one package. If you type
okay,
literally, I think if you search for A Different World season 1, you'll see something come up that'll say seasons 1 through 6, or at least there's several. Put it this way, I've watched maybe 40 episodes in a row. And there's no sign of it stopping anytime soon.
Okay, good. Because when I checked like a year or two ago, something like that for it, but I found it recently, like early this year, on Hulu Plus, man. So I watched all 6 seasons of A Different World over about 3 months. But that's something good for us to show our children also, because it will reorientate them to that time that we were experiencing, to the social issues, and cause them to focus on social issues today. So it's a very, very powerful show. It's difficult to be what you don't see. So when we show our children examples of that, they will gravitate towards that. One of the worst things we can give our children is low expectations, and also not teach them their history and their culture, not teach them who they are.
Absolutely. Well, I tell you, man, this has been a very informative conversation. I really appreciate your time on that, man.
Hey, appreciate you as well.
Yeah, man, and everybody, this is Mr. Michael Imhotep. He's the head of the African History Network, and just so you know, the information he shared today, that's just a drop in the bucket. This brother is full of knowledge, and I think that you should definitely go to visit his site, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. You can listen to his show. Is it TuneIn.com? Is that correct?
Yeah, TuneIn.com on the Empowerment Radio Network. So we're on Sundays, 5 p.m. to 7 p.m. Usually, sometimes I'm out of town, I can't do it, but 5 p.m. to 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Search for Empowerment Radio Network on TuneIn.com. We also have that information and the link on our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. And then on Blog Talk Radio, we're basically on Monday through Fridays, 8 p.m. to 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I got to get you on my show very soon also. Definitely want to interview you. And that information is on our website as well. And the shows are archived on Blog Talk as well. And also on our website, we have about 150 DVD lectures and documentaries as well for sale. So that helps support us, because we don't do this for the money, but it takes money to do this. I know you know that very well. And about 18 of my DVD lectures are there also. My latest one I just did in Atlanta, July 20th at the Liberated Minds Black Homeschooling Education Expo. I was one of the presenters at this homeschooling conference. So I did Part 2 of Slavery's Back in Effect, from Miseducation to Incarceration. So my DVDs are there, and our website connects you to our social media, things like that. And people can sign up for our email newsletter, where we have about 30 plus articles in our email newsletter that goes out a few times a week. They can just text the word KEMET, K-E-M-E-T. Text the word KEMET, K-E-M-E-T, to 22828 right from your smartphone. Text the word KEMET, K-E-M-E-T, to 22828. You can sign up for our email newsletter, or you can do it right at our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. So we're trying to reach people a number of different ways, trying to get information to people. Everybody's not going to get it in this lifetime. But, Harriet Tubman said it best. She said, I freed 1,000 slaves, but I could have freed 1,000 more if they had only known that they were slaves. So she had a waste of their time trying to convince the people who were slaves who didn't know it. Everybody would have been killed. So she spent her time with the people who said, Harriet, you have an MAP, let's get out of here. We're ride or die. We're ready to go with you. So we have to help those who can help us help them.
All right. Well, this brother is talking to the fellow runaway slaves who are on the line with us. So let's get off the plantation. Let's move it forward, and
Absolutely.
let's not look back. And we're not always going to have a consensus. Not everybody's going to agree. Not all
Oh,
white
absolutely.
not all white folks are on the same agenda. So not all black folks are going to be on the same agenda.
Absolutely.
So let's just push forward our agenda, which is an agenda for the future, to build and not to destroy. Well,
Yes.
thank you very much, Michael. I appreciate your time, man. Thank you.
You too. All right, brother. Peace.
And thank you, everybody, for checking us out at yourblackworld.net. And until we meet again, please stay strong, be blessed, and be educated. We are gone. Peace.